She hit the marble floor hard as the jealous mistress burst down the wedding aisle, screaming that the groom belonged to her. In front of stunned guests, the mistress ripped the bouquet from the bride's hands and struck her in the face, causing the pregnant bride to collapse in terror. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed. Cameras filmed everything. But the moment the doors burst open and her father walked in, the entire room froze. His arrival didn't just stop the attack. It ended the wedding, the lies, and the man who failed her. Leave a comment below so we can talk about it. The Grand Palace Hotel gleamed like a palace carved of light. Its chandeliers poured warm golden reflections onto the marble floor, creating a glow so soft and perfect that the whole ballroom seemed suspended in a dream. Tall crystal vases lined the aisle. White lilies overflowed from them in elegant cascades. Their fragrance rose in delicate waves that floated between the seated rows of guests. Each candle flickered with precise discipline. Every bow had been tied with impeccable symmetry. Nothing in the room suggested chaos. Nothing hinted that the night was moments away from collapsing. Guests whispered to each other with hushed excitement as the lights dimmed. Cameras raised. Friends and family leaned forward in anticipation. They had come to witness a spectacular union. The wedding of the year, the fusion of wealth, reputation, and two powerful families. No one imagined the ceremony would be remembered for something else entirely. Something no one could have predicted. Behind the silk curtains at the ballroom entrance, the bride held her bouquet close to her chest. Her fingers clenched unconsciously around the stems as she inhaled slowly. The ivory satin gown enveloped her gently. Its crystal lace bodice shimmered under the stage lights. The soft A-line skirt allowed room for the small but unmistakable curve of her 4-month pregnancy. She had carefully chosen the dress for free movement, and surely, the fine organza sleeves gleamed as the light touched them. Her veil was delicate, edged with crystals that caught the air whenever she inhaled. She whispered a quiet reassurance to her unborn child. Something simple, something hopeful. Tonight is a good night. Tonight is our start. Her voice only trembled slightly, the way a candle flickers even in a still room. The music began. A single violin note rose like a ray of morning light, followed by the warm hum of a cello. The melody gently wrapped around her, propelling her forward. Two attendants pulled back the silk curtains, and a river of golden light spilled onto her figure. The room gasped. She stepped onto the marble aisle, and the sound of her heel striking the stone echoed with perfect clarity. Phones instantly raised. Guests covered their mouths, struck by how radiant she looked. Her veil floated behind her like a cloud of light. Her face was soft, glowing, peaceful. Her hand brushed her belly for a moment, a tender gesture made almost instinctively, and several guests whispered to each other that she looked like an angel. She began her slow walk down the aisle. Candles glowed at her sides. Each step felt balanced and calm. She felt beautiful, hopeful, and certain that life was finally aligning for her. The man at the end of the aisle was the father of her child, the future she believed in, the stability she craved. In her mind, the world warmed with promises, but that warmth did not reach the groom. He stood beneath the floral archway, clad in a custom black tuxedo that should have made him look confident, but instead looked like a straitjacket. Sweat gleamed on his temples. He kept tugging at his collar, though the room temperature was comfortably cool. His breathing was ragged. His eyes darted repeatedly toward the side door behind him. Each time he looked there, his jaw tightened. He looked less like a man waiting to marry the woman of his life, and more like a man waiting for a threat to burst through the wall at any second. Some guests noticed his tension. They exchanged confused glances, but no one said anything. They assumed it was nerves, or stage fright, or simply excitement. The bride did not notice his unease. Her focus was locked on her future. Her heart beat to the rhythm of the music. She imagined exchanging vows. She imagined the applause. She imagined a quiet life, finally within reach. She only saw beauty. She only heard music. And she only felt quiet joy. Every step brought her closer to the altar, to the promise of a family, to the belief that tonight everything would be okay. Midway down the aisle, the orchestra swelled to its most beautiful harmony. The bride inhaled softly, embracing the moment, letting it fill her like warm sunshine. The room seemed to hold its breath in admiration. Then it happened. A violent bang cleaved the air. The service doors behind the groom burst open with such force that the impact resonated across the marble like a gunshot. Guests started in their seats. A woman gasped loudly. A man dropped his glass. The musicians froze. The violin bow hung suspended in the air. The cellist's fingers stopped on the strings. The entire room fell silent in a single, stunned beat. The bride's bouquet trembled. She stopped walking. Her eyes slowly raised to the source of the sound explosion. Her veil shifted slightly as the air changed. The candles shook. A shadow filled the doorway. A figure stood there, framed by the bright hallway lights behind her. The outline was unmistakably female, but the posture was rigid, aggressive, as if carved from fury. Her silhouette blocked the hall's glare. Her presence swallowed the room's silence. More guests gasped. Someone whispered a name. Someone else muttered that this couldn't be happening. The groom's face drained of all color. His lips parted, his pupils dilated, as if he had just seen a ghost refusing to stay buried. The bride felt the atmosphere twist. The room no longer felt warm. It felt like a tightrope, about to snap. She took a single step back, and the woman in the doorway took one forward. The candles flickered violently, as if they sensed the danger before anyone else. The bride tightened her grip on her bouquet. Her breath hitched. She didn't know who the woman was. She didn't understand why the groom looked terrified. She only knew one thing. The ceremony that had been perfect moments ago had cracked. The night had changed. Something disastrous had arrived, and the ballroom braced itself, sensing this was only the beginning. The woman in red moved first. 1 second she was framed in the entrance, and the next she was bursting down the aisle with the speed of someone who had lost control hours ago, and was only now unleashing everything inside. Each sharp click of her stiletto heels resonated against the marble like a countdown. Guests instinctively leaned back as she passed, their faces contorting with confusion, disbelief, and a growing sense of dread. A wedding was supposed to be sacred. A wedding was supposed to be untouchable. But the red dress carving down the aisle made it clear that nothing about this night was safe. Her hair bounced wildly across her shoulders as she screamed, her voice rough and venomous. "He doesn't love you! He never did! He belongs to me!" The words flew through the ballroom, striking the air with brutal force. Gasps erupted from the front rows. Some people thought they misheard. Others exchanged frantic glances. But no one misinterpreted the rage in her voice. It didn't shake. It didn't hesitate. It was forged with certainty and betrayal, sharpened by jealousy and fueled by the desire to destroy the woman in white. The groom remained at the altar, unmoving. His face tightened, then relaxed, then tightened again, as if his body couldn't decide whether to flee or collapse. His eyes silently begged her to stop, but he still said nothing. His paralysis spoke the truth before any confession could, and the truth was a blade that cut the bride before the mistress even touched her. The bride stood motionless mid-aisle. Her bouquet trembled in her hands. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She felt the floor tilt very slightly beneath her shoes. Her veil billowed as if a cold wind had blown through the room. She looked at the groom, searching for reassurance, but found none. His expression was carved in fear, not fear for her, but fear of being exposed. She took a single uncertain step back. The mistress closed the distance like a predator fixing its prey. When she reached the bride, she did not pause to breathe or explain. Her hand shot forward and grabbed the bouquet with a violent tug. The lilies ripped free from the bride's grasp. The delicate stems snapped. White petals scattered across the polished floor like torn feathers. The bride gasped, her hands suddenly empty, her breath stolen. The mistress raised the shattered bouquet. Then she hurled it aside. It hit the floor with a dull thud. Flowers shattered into the chaos. "You think he wants you?" she shrieked. "You think this baby will make him stay? He told me everything. He told me you were pathetic. He told me you were nothing." The bride shook her head. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Please, stop. You're hurting me. You're ruining everything." The mistress moved closer, almost chest to chest now, her breath hot with fury. Then she raised her hand. Guests gasped, realizing what was coming, but powerless to stop it. The slap struck the bride with brutal precision. The sound resonated through the ballroom with a sharp crack that silenced even the frantic whispers. The force of the blow twisted the bride's head sideways. Her veil whipped violently across her face. Pain shot through her jaw and neck. Her vision blurred. Her knees gave out. Her body pitched forward as gravity dragged her down. Instinct overcame shock, and her hands flew to her stomach. She covered her belly protectively, even as she fell. Her ivory gown billowed around her in a soft wave of fabric, but the marble beneath offered no mercy. She hit the floor hard on her knees, then her palms, the impact vibrating up her arms. The room exploded. Screams erupted from the seats. Someone yelled for security. Another screamed for her to be stopped. Chaos filled every corner of the room. Guests rose abruptly, knocking over chairs and scattering programs. A woman shrieked, begging someone to help the bride. A man tried to rush forward, but others blocked the aisle in panic. Musicians dropped their instruments. A violin hit the floor with a crash, sending a high, discordant note through the air. The mistress did not stop. "Get up. Look at me. Look at the woman he really wants." Her voice dripped triumph. Her eyes gleamed with hatred. She moved toward the bride again, as if intending to strike a second time. The bride slowly lifted her head, the veil covering half her face. Her breath came in short, trembling bursts. She tried to speak, but the words died in her throat. Tears welled behind her eyes, not just from the pain, but from an anguish so deep she felt it in her bones. Her cheek burned, her knees throbbed, her palms stung from the unforgiving stone. But none of it compared to the terror that squeezed her chest, with the realization that the mistress might strike again. She hugged her stomach tighter, protecting her child with shaking arms. Around her, the world blurred into a whirlpool of noise. Flames of panic ignited everywhere. Someone in the third row sobbed uncontrollably. Another guest grabbed a phone and began recording. The dimmed lights flickered over dozens of horrified faces. Every person was frozen in a moment that felt unreal, as if the wedding had been swallowed by a nightmare. The mistress leaned forward, her lips twisting into a cruel smile. "This was supposed to be my wedding, not yours. Do you hear me?" Her voice cracked with a mixture of rage and desperation. She raised her hand again. That movement broke the crowd's paralysis. A bridesmaid shrieked. Several guests rushed toward the front, shoving chairs aside, trying to reach the bride before the mistress struck again. Security guards sprinted from the back of the hall. Their footsteps rang loudly across the marble floor. The bride's heart pounded wildly. She pushed up on one elbow, trying to crawl backward, but her dress tangled around her legs. She gasped. Her body trembled uncontrollably. She whispered again to the child inside her. "It's okay. Please stay safe. Please stay safe." Her plea was drowned out by the chaos. The mistress lunged. Two security guards grabbed her arms just as she reached the bride. She shrieked, twisting violently against their grasp. Her red dress flailed like a burning flame. "Let me go. He said he loved me. She's the reason he lied. She doesn't deserve him." Her voice rose into a raw, piercing scream that echoed off the stone walls. The bride watched through her veil, her breathing shallow, her face pale, unable to comprehend how a moment of joy had turned into a battlefield. Her hands trembled as she clutched her stomach, praying her baby remained unharmed. She swallowed a sob as the room spun around her. More guests crowded the aisle. Someone knelt beside her. Someone else yelled for an ambulance. Still another person screamed that they had it all on video, that this was an assault, that the woman in red should be arrested. The room shook with fear, confusion, and disbelief. A wedding that was meant to unite two families had dissolved into chaos in a matter of seconds. The bride felt tears stream onto her veil as she struggled to stabilize her breathing. Her cheek throbbed, her knees ached, her heart broke. The mistress continued screaming as security dragged her backward, her voice cracking, her fury churning the air. And through the commotion, the bride sensed something else, a shift, a presence, a new tension vibrating at the edge of the hall. Someone important had just arrived, someone who would not tolerate this, someone who would end everything. For a moment, the world did not move. Not the candles, not the guests, not even the dust in the air. It was as if time froze at the exact second the bride hit the marble floor. She lay curled on her side, one arm wrapped protectively over her stomach, the other pressed against the cold stone as she tried to breathe. Her veil lay across her face, soft and trembling, like a curtain drawn over a broken heart. Her cheek throbbed from the force of the slap, her knees burned, her hands shook, but the fear that engulfed her completely went far beyond the pain. The ballroom, moments ago exploding with chaos, fell into an eerie stillness. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear someone swallow. You could hear the bride whisper a tiny sob that barely escaped her lips. And through it all, the groom did not move. He stood at the altar like a statue carved of guilt and cowardice. His eyes were wide, frantic. They were not darting toward the woman he vowed to protect, but toward the doorway where the mistress had been dragged moments before, his jaw clamped, his Adam's apple moving as he struggled for breath. He lifted one foot as if to move forward, but fear anchored him to the floor. Several guests looked at him. Their confusion transformed into disbelief. Why wasn't he helping his wife? Why wasn't he kneeling by her side? Why wasn't he running to protect the baby everyone knew she carried? The bride whispered again, her fingers gently scratching the floor as she tried to push up. Her voice was barely audible. "Please, I need help." A wave of shock went through the crowd as her hand slid under her belly. For the first time, many guests saw the truth. She wasn't just a bride. She was a mother-to-be. And someone had just assaulted her. Gasps spread through the room. A woman in the front row covered her mouth. A man whispered a few words that sounded like a prayer. Someone stammered that this was illegal. Another person said this was assault. Another choked that this was worse than assault because she was pregnant. Still, the groom did nothing. He stood rigid, shoulders tense, breathing shallow. His tuxedo looked too small for his body, as if it were choking him. The weight of the room pressed down on him, yet he remained motionless, his eyes flicking between the bride and the mistress being restrained at the back. His silence screamed louder than any confession. One of the bridesmaids stumbled forward, but hesitated. She looked at the groom, desperate for a direction. He gave none. The room seemed to fold in on itself. Walls closed in. Lights trembled. Even the floral arrangement seemed to lean toward the bride, as if begging someone to step forward. But no one dared to move until they knew what the groom would do. They waited. They hoped. They believed he might finally remember that the woman on the floor carried his child. But he didn't. Instead, he took a small step backward. The air left the room in a collective gasp. The bride heard it. She looked up from the floor, her eyes glazed and red behind her veil. She saw his foot move. She saw his face twist with fear. Not for her, but for himself. She saw him choose not to help her. A single tear rolled down her cheek, disappearing into the lace of her veil. She whispered the truth to herself, a truth sharper than any blade. "He's not coming." That realization shook the ballroom harder than the mistress's attack. A man in the second row stepped forward, furious. "What kind of husband are you?" he yelled. His voice boomed through the silence, breaking it like a hammer through glass. More guests rose to their feet. Their expressions shifted from astonishment to outrage. Some pointed at the groom. Some murmured that he should be ashamed. Others said he should be helping his wife instead of acting like a coward. Still, he did not move. His hands trembled at his sides. His eyes remained fixed on the floor, as if he wished the marble would swallow him before he had to face what he had caused. His breathing sounded rough and uneven, but he did not take a single step toward the bride. Meanwhile, the bride struggled to push herself up. Her arms trembled violently. She pushed against the floor, but her dress constrained her, trapping her against the cold marble, her stomach tight with fear. She clutched it hard, praying the baby was unharmed. Someone finally broke away from the crowd. A woman in a navy dress, older and composed, rushed toward the bride. Her heels clicked sharply as she knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, it's okay. I'm here," she whispered. Her voice cracked with sympathy and fear. She placed a gentle hand on the bride's shoulder. The bride's breath hitched. She whispered a trembling reply, "My baby. I just need to protect my baby." The woman nodded quickly, her eyes filling with concern. "We'll get you checked out. Don't move too fast. Just breathe." But the eyes of the room were not on the kind stranger. They were on the groom. His shoulders slumped under the weight of judgment. His reputation, his dignity, his decency, all shattered as he stood there doing nothing. Guests began to whisper louder. How could he let that happen? He's afraid of the mistress. He's guilty. He doesn't care about his wife or his child. The groom closed his eyes tightly, as if closing his eyes would erase the truth. But the truth had already taken hold. This was no longer just a scandal. It was a betrayal witnessed by an entire room of people. A betrayal recorded on dozens of phones. A betrayal the bride would remember for the rest of her life. The bridesmaid who had hesitated earlier finally stepped forward, kneeling on the other side of the bride. "Can you hear me?" she asked softly. The bride nodded faintly. A faint murmur rose from the back of the room, growing louder with every second. Heavy footsteps were approaching, firm and potent, echoing like a judge entering a courtroom. The crowd slowly turned. Even the groom looked up. Someone was coming. Someone who would change everything. Someone whose sheer presence carried authority and consequence. The bride closed her eyes as the tension in the room tightened again, taking the shape of something sharp and irreversible. The silence shattered, and the father arrived. The heavy footsteps grew louder, but before anyone could fully turn to the entrance, another sound swept through the hall, a sharp electronic chime, then another. Then, dozens. Phones vibrated. Screens lit up. Notifications flashed across the room like wildfire. People looked at their devices, eyes wide, as something horrifying became evident. The attack was already online. Someone had been live streaming the entire scene from the moment the mistress rushed down the aisle. The video instantly spread through the crowd, showing the bride collapsing, the slap ringing out, the chaos erupting. Comments poured in at lightning speed. Shock, outrage, disbelief. Strangers demanding justice for the pregnant bride. In the ballroom, a young guest in a dark suit stepped forward, holding his phone aloft, as if it were a piece of evidence in a courtroom. His voice boomed, trembling with adrenaline. "I got the whole thing on video, every second. She assaulted the bride unprovoked. She knew the bride was pregnant." Gasps ran through the guests like a wave breaking on the shore. More people raised their phones. They had captured the scream, the slap, the fall, the groom doing nothing. Every angle revealed another layer of cruelty. Every frame deepened the horror of what had just happened. The bride struggled to push up on shaky arms. Her breathing was ragged. The veil slipped from her forehead as she turned her head toward the crowd. Her cheek was already swelling. Tears clung to her lashes. Her lips trembled with shock. Another guest stepped forward, a woman with a set jaw and a calm but authoritative tone. "I'm a nurse," she announced. "Move back. Give her air. Let me check her." And she knelt gently beside the bride and softly pressed 2 fingers to the inside of her wrist. "Your pulse is fast, sweetheart. Breathe slowly for me. In and out." The bride tried to regulate her breathing, but fear squeezed her chest like a vice. "My baby," she whispered. "Please tell me my baby is okay." The nurse placed a careful hand on the bride's lower abdomen, her movements professional and quick. "Tell me if you feel any sharp pain," she instructed softly. "Or any sudden cramping." The bride shook her head. "No, just fear. I'm just terrified." The nurse nodded, relief crossing her features. "That's good. No bleeding, no sharp pain. These are positive signs. But you need a medical evaluation as soon as possible to be sure. For now, keep breathing slowly. Don't get up yet. You experienced trauma, but your body is responding well." The bride closed her eyes, clutching the words like a lifeline. "Thank God," she whispered. Around her, the ballroom had become a court of law. Every guest had become a witness. Every camera had become evidence. Every second felt heavier than the last. The murmurs grew louder, filled with indignation and disgust. "This is a crime. She assaulted a pregnant woman. I can't believe we're seeing this in real life." The groom stood there. He did nothing. He should be ashamed of himself. The groom's face crumpled. He closed his eyes as if wishing he could disappear. Sweat streamed down his temple. He swallowed hard, but still did not move toward his wife. The nurse looked up, disbelief burning in her expression. "Why isn't he here?" she whispered to no one in particular. A bridesmaid responded with a voice laced with bitterness. "He's afraid of the mistress. He cares more about her than his own family." The groom winced at the words. The nurse shook her head and refocused on the bride. "Listen to me. You are strong. You protected your baby. You are safe right now. Everything around you looks chaotic, but you are not alone." But the bride felt alone, more alone than she had felt in her entire life. Her husband was only 15 feet away and felt like a stranger. Suddenly, someone held up their phone higher than the rest. On the screen, the playback froze at the exact moment the mistress struck the bride. The slap was suspended in the air. The bride's head twisted. The lilies flew. It was undeniable, sharp, brutal. The video zoomed in, showing the mistress's fingernails, sharp and red, cutting the air. She struck her with intent. "Look at her face. That's rage. That's not an accident." Another guest held up their phone. "I have the angle from the side. You can see the groom watching. He did nothing to stop it." A tense silence washed over the room. Even the humming of the phone seemed to dim under the weight of the evidence. A man in a gray suit stepped forward, his expression hard as steel. "This is no longer a wedding. This is a crime scene." Another added, "She needs medical attention and police protection. That woman in red should be arrested on the spot." The bride trembled. Hearing the word "arrested" felt unreal. It made everything sharper, scarier, more real. She pressed her hands back against her stomach. "My baby," she whispered. "Please be safe. Please stay with me." The nurse ran a soothing hand over her shoulder. "You're doing everything right. Keep breathing. Help is here now." But the tension in the room rose again. People turned toward the back of the hall. Voices hushed, shoulders tightened, because the footsteps from earlier had finally reached the entrance. And this time, no one looked at their phones. No one whispered. No one moved. Everyone just stared. A figure stood framed in the doorway. Tall, imposing, radiating an authority so intense that even the air seemed to hesitate. The bride felt him before she saw him. Her breath hitched. Her eyes widened. Her heart plummeted, and then surged. Her father had arrived, and the world inside that ballroom was about to change forever. The doors of the grand palace did not just open. They swung open, as if something ancient and powerful had commanded them to. A cold draft swept the room, grazing the candles and making their flames lean. All conversation died instantly. Every whisper faded to nothing. The entire room seemed to contract, as if gravity itself shifted toward the entrance. And then he appeared, Ignacio Delgado, the man whose name carried enough weight to move markets, silence boardrooms, and make corrupt politicians forget their own voices. Tall, broad-shouldered, silver at his temples, eyes carved from authority, a charcoal suit that fit him with the kind of precision usually reserved for weapons. He did not hurry. He did not look around. He walked with the calm, terrifying certainty of a man who had already won a battle that others hadn't yet realized had begun. Guests instinctively parted. Their bodies reacted before their minds could process it. His presence was not loud. It was not frantic. It was simply undeniable. the kind of presence that commanded a room without uttering a single word. The bride saw him through her veil. Her breath caught. Her hand clamped onto her stomach. Her heart broke open in a rush of fear, pain, and overwhelming relief. She whispered the only word her trembling lips could form. "Dad." Ignacio's gaze swept the room like a storm, scanning the landscape it was about to consume. He saw everything. The lilies scattered on the marble, the twisted veil, the guests standing in shock, the security guards restraining the mistress who had stopped screaming. And she now looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. And then he saw the groom. The groom froze, completely. His face was stripped of its last drop of color. His hands hung limply at his sides. He looked like a child standing before a verdict he knew he deserved. For a moment, Ignacio simply watched him, his expression unreadable. The silence in the room became sharper. Even the crystal chandeliers seemed to stop gleaming, afraid to make a sound. Finally, Ignacio moved again. He walked toward the bride. Every step resonated. Slow, even, measured. The steps of a man who was not rushing to the chaos, but controlling it. The crowd parted. Some bowed their heads. Some backed away, as if avoiding a lightning strike. The mistress whimpered, shrinking in the security guard's grasp. No longer the furious woman in red, but a trembling figure who understood too late the magnitude of the man approaching. Ignacio knelt beside his daughter. The marble floor reflected the sharp lines of his face as he reached out and gently lifted the veil from her eyes. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet, but it carried more weight than any shout. "My daughter, I'm here." The bride shattered. Her breath broke into sobs she had been holding since the slap. Her fingers clawed onto his sleeve like a drowning soul finding land. He brushed a trembling strand of hair from her cheek, his thumb gently passing over the swelling. "Who touched you?" he asked, not loudly, not angry, but deadly. The nurse answered before the bride could. "Sir, she was struck in the face. She fell hard onto her knees. She is scared but stable. The baby appears unharmed for now, but she needs medical attention." Ignacio nodded once, a gesture sharp enough to cut the tension. "Thank you. Stay with her." He rose to his full height. The room felt smaller suddenly, as if there wasn't enough air for everyone. His gaze swept to the mistress. She tried to speak, a pathetic attempt at justification. She provoked." Ignacio raised a single hand. She stopped instantly. Even the guard straightened. His voice needed no volume. It traveled the room like a blade. "You assaulted my daughter, my pregnant daughter." The mistress whimpered again. Her legs trembled. The crowd recoiled from his words. Hearing them spoken out loud gave the crime a terrifying clarity. Then, Ignacio turned to the groom. Gasps erupted like sparks, jumping from a live wire. The groom stumbled a step backward. His breathing quickened. His lips trembled. He whispered, "Sir, I can explain." But Ignacio did not blink. He simply stared at the man who had let his daughter fall alone onto a marble floor, who had watched her be struck, who had offered her no protection whatsoever, who had chosen silence over responsibility. The groom continued, "I didn't mean for this to happen. I was in shock. I froze. Please, believe me. I love her." Ignacio's jaw tightened. The room waited for his response, the way a battlefield waits for the first cannon shot. "You did nothing," he said softly. "She was on the floor, and you did nothing." The groom's knees nearly gave out. Ignacio took another step closer. The groom flinched. "You will not speak to her now," Ignacio said. "You will not go near her. You will not justify your cowardice with excuses." Someone gasped at the word cowardice. Someone else whispered that the groom deserved much worse. Ignacio looked away from him, as if he no longer existed. His focus returned completely to the bride. "Security," he commanded. 2 guards stepped forward immediately. "Clear the aisle. Prepare transport for my daughter. No one hinders her. If anyone tries, remove them." "Yes, sir." "And the woman in red stays where she is until the police arrive." The mistress began to weep openly now. Ignacio did not look at her. Instead, he turned to the guests, giving them the composed nod only a man used to leading crises could deliver. "Thank you for maintaining calm. Everyone will be asked for statements. Every recording you took tonight will be needed." A wave of murmurs swept through the aisle. Phones raised. People nodded vigorously. Some even apologized to the bride from across the room. Ignacio knelt again, lifting his daughter carefully into his arms. She clung to him, burying her face in his shoulder, trembling against the security she thought she had lost forever. He whispered into her hair, "You are safe now, I promise you. No one will ever hurt you again." And with that, Ignacio Delgado rose with his daughter in his arms. The room had opened for him like the sea. A father carrying his broken daughter, a force no one dared to oppose. A storm made of love and fury. And as he walked toward the doors, the groom finally slumped into a chair, knowing the truth. His life would never be the same. The moment Ignacio carried his daughter in his arms, the groom snapped out of his shock. It was as if reality finally broke through his panic. His breathing became ragged. His hands clenched and unclenched. Something inside him broke loose, and he stumbled forward, desperate. "Wait. Please, let me talk to her. I need to explain," he managed to say as he rushed toward them. But 2 security guards moved at once. They stepped into his path with silent precision, forming a barrier he could not cross. Their arms raised in unison, a clear command without a single word. "Sir, step back," one of them said firmly. "I'm her husband," the groom insisted, his voice cracking. "You can't keep me from her." The guard did not flinch. "By order of her father, no one goes near her, especially you." Gasps spread among the guests. Phones raised again, capturing every second. The groom felt the cameras on him. He felt the judgment. He felt the eyes that once admired him now stripping every layer of his persona. Ignacio did not even turn around. He simply kept walking, his daughter in his arms. The aisle opened up like shadows fleeing the light. The groom tried again. "She needs to hear me. I love her. I froze because I was in shock. I never meant for her to get hurt." But the second guard stepped closer. His voice held the cold certainty of someone who had seen too many selfish men justify themselves. "Sir, step back. This is not about you." The groom's chest tightened. His throat closed. Panic climbed his spine like fire. He looked around the room for support, but everywhere he looked, he saw only disapproval. A woman whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's trying to save himself, not her." Another man shook his head. "He watched his pregnant wife get assaulted and did nothing. No explanation fixes that." Someone else held up their phone, speaking into it as they live-streamed. Here he is, the groom, trying to explain himself to the crowd after allowing his wife to be assaulted. Look at him. Unbelievable. The groom's stomach twisted. "This isn't fair," he whispered to himself. "I didn't know what to do. Anyone would have frozen." But no one was listening. Not anymore. A bridesmaid stepped forward, her eyes burning with fury. "We all saw it. You chose her. The mistress. You looked at her first, not the bride, not your baby. You hesitated because you were afraid of losing the other woman. The groom tried to deny it, but the words stuck in his throat because she was right. And everyone knew it. He reached out helplessly, but the guards blocked him again. "Move," he pleaded. "I need to talk to her. Please, she's my wife." The guard replied emotionlessly, "Your actions tonight say otherwise." Behind them, Ignacio continued toward the exit, but the nurse yelled, "Sir, the ambulance is on the way. She shouldn't be moved far." Ignacio nodded, adjusting his grip on his daughter. "Then we will wait by the entrance, away from these cameras." Hearing that, the groom's panic spiked. He lunged once more, desperation overriding logic. "If she leaves without hearing me, she'll think I don't care. Please, I love her." This time, the guard placed a firm hand on his chest. "Sir, stop. You are disrupting everyone." The groom's voice cracked. "I'm disrupting everyone. She's my wife." A woman near the front row snapped. "You should have remembered that while she was on the floor begging for help." Her words hit him harder than a punch. Another voice joined. "You failed her, and the whole world saw it." And indeed, the whole world had seen it. Across the hall, dozens of screens lit up with the same video. The slap, the fall, the groom standing, frozen. Comments streamed faster than anyone could read. "What a coward. She deserves better. How could he do nothing while she was pregnant? He was protecting the mistress." The arrival of the father was the best thing. The groom felt the walls closing in on him. Every notification sound was like a blade cutting the last fragments of his dignity. "I just froze," he whispered again. "I made a mistake. I just froze." But the truth stood tall and unforgiving in front of him. He had done nothing. Now that nothing was stronger than any excuse he could offer, the mistress, still restrained, tried to speak through her tears. "Help me, please," she said. "He told me he would leave her. He told me he—" The crowd erupted in outrage. "Shut up. You ruined her life. You almost hurt the baby. You should go to jail." For the first time since her arrest, the mistress realized the groom couldn't protect her. He couldn't protect anyone, not even himself. The groom covered his face with both hands, shaking, everything around him blurred. The guests, the guards, the bright lights, the accusations, all melding into a storm he couldn't escape. He dropped to his knees. "Please," he whispered, "please just let me fix this." But there was nothing left to fix. Across the aisle, Ignacio turned his head slightly, just enough to see the groom kneeling on the floor. His expression did not soften. His eyes did not waver. He simply looked at the man who had failed his daughter, and then looked away, because the groom's regret had arrived too late, too shallow, too small compared to the damage he had allowed. When the paramedics finally rushed through the doors, the bride was already sheltered by her father's presence, and the entire room stood behind her. The groom was alone, more alone than he had ever been, and the world was watching. The room was silent when Ignacio finally turned to face the groom. Not a whisper, not a breath. The tension was dense, as if the entire room had been encased in glass and was one vibration away from shattering. The groom shakily rose from the floor, wiping his face with the back of his trembling hand. His voice cracked as he tried to compose himself. "Please, let me explain. I never wanted any of this to happen. I just froze. I was scared." Ignacio did not move. He did not blink. He stood like a monument sculpted in fury and restraint. When he finally spoke, the words were quiet, but they hit the groom harder than any shout ever could. "You were scared," Ignacio repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "My daughter was on the floor, pregnant, crying, and you were scared." The groom swallowed hard, nodding frantically. "Yes, no. I should have reacted faster. I know. I would never let her be hurt. I love her." Ignacio took a slow step forward. The groom flinched. "You love her," Ignacio said. "You watched her fall. You heard her beg for help, and yet you stood frozen like a coward." A painful murmur spread among the guests. Every word resonated down the groom's spine. "I can do better," he whispered. "I plead. I can be better. Please don't take her away from me." Ignacio looked at him the same way a judge looks at a man already sentenced. "I am not taking her away. You let her go the moment you chose cowardice over love." The groom sank into silence. Ignacio turned to the guards. "Escort him out of the ballroom. He is not to follow us to the hospital. If he tries, call the police." The groom's eyes widened as two guards approached. "Please, Ignacio, I beg you, don't do this. I'm still her fiancé." Ignacio's answer struck like a verdict. "You were." The guards took one arm each. The groom struggled weakly. "Please don't do this. I love her. I swear I love her." Ignacio inclined his head. "If that were true, I wouldn't be taking her out of here. You would." The room erupted in whispers louder than before. Some guests turned away in disgust. Others nodded in approval. Others looked at the groom as if he were a story they would tell later, a cautionary tale about what true weakness looks like. For the last time, the groom pleaded. "Let me see her, please. She needs to hear me. She needs to know I'm sorry." Ignacio's voice was calm. "A real man doesn't need words to show he cares. He shows it with actions. You showed nothing." The guards dragged him toward the side exit. He stumbled, looking desperately toward the door where Ignacio had carried the bride out. His voice cracked into something broken. "Please, please, don't let her hate me." Ignacio did not turn. He did not hesitate. He gave the final command with deadly clarity. "Get him out." The groom was dragged out of the hall, his pleas fading into the silence. It was over. Not just the wedding, not just the relationship, but the version of himself he thought he could hide behind. Ignacio stood alone in the center of the ballroom, guests watching in awe and fear. He adjusted his cuffs. He straightened his suit. He lifted his head. The storm had spoken, and no one dared to challenge its verdict. The ambulance doors slammed shut with a metallic thump that echoed in the bride's bones. She lay strapped to the stretcher, her hands trembling, her breathing ragged. The bright lights above her flickered as the vehicle lurched forward. Her father sat beside her, refusing to let go of her hand. His jaw was clenched. His eyes were fixed on her face, as if he was imploring her to stay conscious. "Stay with me, darling," he murmured, his voice low and firm. "You're safe now. Just breathe." But she couldn't stop shaking. Every bump in the road sent a jolt of fear through her abdomen. Her fingers gripped the blanket covering her. She closed her eyes, trying to calm the storm inside her chest. But the memory of the slap, the fall, and the cold marble floor replayed over and over. She felt the weight of her body hitting the floor, the impact, the terror, the instinctive need to protect her baby. "Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm scared." Ignacio leaned closer. "I know, and you have every right to be, but we're almost at the hospital. The doctors will take care of you. I promise." The ambulance stopped sharply. The doors burst open. A rush of white coats and medical staff hurried in, their movements quick but controlled. They slid the stretcher out, and wheeled her down the bright hallway. "Female patient, 23 weeks pregnant," a paramedic shouted. "Blunt trauma from fall. No visible bleeding. No contractions yet. High stress. High risk. Immediate fetal check needed." The words stabbed her like needles. 23 weeks. She knew what that meant. Too soon. Too fragile. Too dangerous. They pushed her into an examination room. Fluorescent lights buzzed above. Machines beeped. Gloves snapped on. A nurse put warm gel on her abdomen as the ultrasound probe touched her skin. "Breathe deeply," the nurse said. But breathing felt impossible. Every second stretched into an eternity. Her father stood by the bedside, his hands clasped behind him, every muscle in his body taut. His eyes never left the monitor. The doctor entered, a calm man with alert eyes, and carefully examined the ultrasound screen. The room fell silent. Even the machines seemed to quiet, as if waiting for his judgment. After what felt like the longest minute of her life, the doctor exhaled softly. "There's a heartbeat." Her breath hitched, her eyes instantly filled. She covered her mouth with her hand. She heard it, that tiny rhythmic sound, fast, strong, alive. Her father's hand landed on her forehead, soft and shaking at once. "Thank God," he whispered. But the doctor was not finished. "Your baby is stable for now," he said, his tone firm but cautious. "However, the fall caused significant stress to both of you. Your body reacted in shock, and shock can sometimes trigger complications. You must remain under observation." The bride nodded quickly, tears still streaming. "I'll do anything to keep my baby safe," the doctor continued. "You'll need absolute bed rest, no emotional stress, no physical exertion. If you experience dizziness, abdominal pain, bleeding, or contractions, you must alert us immediately." Ignacio stepped forward. "What are the chances of long-term damage?" The doctor hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Right now, the signs are encouraging, but we can't rule out the risk. Trauma during pregnancy is unpredictable. Your daughter did everything right by protecting her abdomen during the fall. That most likely saved the child." Her father closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the truth. The bride felt a wave of guilt so sudden it stole her breath. "It's my fault," she whispered. "If I had backed away sooner, if I had avoided her, if I—" Ignacio's voice erupted into the room like thunder. "No, none of this is your fault. You were attacked. You were caught by surprise. The blame lies with others, not you." She broke into sobs again, burying her face in her hands. The nurse adjusted her blankets. "You are safe now, and your baby fought hard. That heartbeat is strong. Hold on to that," the doctor added. "We'll keep you here overnight. After that, pending your tests, we can decide on next steps." Ignacio pulled a chair to the bedside and sat down. "I'm not leaving," he said firmly. She reached out for his hand. "Thank you, Dad," and he brushed his thumb across the back of her hand. "When you were born, you were so small I could hold you in one arm. I promised your mother I would keep you safe. I failed you today, but I won't fail again." "Dad, you didn't fail," she whispered. "You saved me." He lowered his forehead to her hand, his voice breaking in a way she had never heard before. "I should have protected you sooner." She shook her head weakly. "You protected me exactly when I needed you most." The monitor beeped steadily. That small, powerful heartbeat filled the room like a blessing. She listened to it over and over, letting it calm her, letting it remind her that she was not alone. For the first time since the wedding ballroom, She felt grounded, held, safe. But deep inside, another feeling grew. A quiet fire. A vow. Whoever broke her world today would never be allowed near her child again. By the time the bride was settled in her hospital room, the world outside had already erupted. The video of the attack spread with a speed no one could control. It lit up all major platforms within hours. Hashtags multiplied. Comments soared. The images replayed over and over, capturing every horrifying detail. The slap, the fall, the groom standing motionless, the father intervening with the force of a storm. Millions watched, millions judged, and the world was not kind. In the wedding ballroom, police cars lined the entrance. Their blue lights washed over the marble pillars, painting the building in cold, sharp flashes. Agents moved quickly, talking to guests, collecting phones, gathering every angle of the assault. The mistress sat on a bench in a side hallway, handcuffed, mascara running down her cheeks. Her red dress, once perfect, was crumpled and damp with tears. She could hear the agents talking nearby. Motive clear. Deliberate strike. High risk to a pregnant woman. This is serious. Her breathing became shallow. I didn't mean to hurt the baby, she murmured, her voice trembling. I was angry. She was taking him away from me. An agent turned sharply. You assaulted a pregnant woman in public. That's not anger. That's assault with potential fetal harm. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing harder. In another room, the groom sat alone with two police detectives. His hair was disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot. He looked like a man who had aged a decade in an hour. A phone rested on the table in front of him, showing the video he couldn't stop watching. The moment he failed, over and over, unfiltered, unexcused, unescapable. Sir, the detective said, we need your statement. But the groom barely heard him. His mind replayed the scene in incessant loops. His bride falling, her screaming, his own body motionless, refusing to move. I loved her, he whispered. The detective sighed. Love is a verb, not a feeling. You did nothing. Those 3 words hurt more deeply than the groom expected. You did nothing. He closed his eyes, and tears escaped despite his effort to hold them back. Meanwhile, the ballroom buzzed with activity. Guests gave statements. Some were trembling. Some were still furious. Some were stunned into silence by how quickly a celebration turned into a scandal. A guest held up his phone. This angle shows the mistress running toward the bride. No hesitation. It wasn't an accident. Another added. And here. Look, he's just standing there, watching. Police collected every clip. Later, a superior officer addressed a camera crew outside the venue. Reporters leaned forward. Microphones jostled around him. At this time, he announced, the suspect responsible for the physical assault has been detained. Charges include assault causing bodily injury and endangerment of a pregnant woman. Additional charges may follow pending medical reports. Reporters erupted in questions. What about the groom? Was he involved? Does he face charges? The officer held up a hand. He is currently considered a witness. His inaction, though morally questionable, is not criminal. The investigation is ongoing. Social media disagreed. To the public, the mistress was a villain, but the groom had become something worse, a symbol of betrayal, a man who watched harm unfold and did nothing. Back in the hospital, the bride slept, exhausted. Machines beeped softly around her. Her father stood by the window talking to an officer. She will cooperate with your investigation, Ignacio said, but only once she is stable. Of course, sir, the officer replied. We will return in the morning. Ignacio nodded, but his eyes remained hard with fury. The officer hesitated before speaking again. And sir, the husband, he keeps requesting access to her. Ignacio's jaw tightened. No, we try to keep him out. But he insists. Ignacio stepped forward, his voice low. My daughter was attacked today. She fell hard. She could have lost her child, and her husband did nothing to stop it. He does not have permission to see her. Not now, and not ever again. If he comes near her door, you remove him. Yes, sir, the officer said immediately. A nurse approached. Her vitals are stable. She's resting quietly. Ignacio finally exhaled. Thank you. Meanwhile, the groom sat outside the hospital entrance, his head in his hands. He had tried to get in. Security turned him away every time. Please, he whispered to no one in particular. Let me fix this. Just let me see her. But the world had chosen its side. The police, the guests, the public, and most importantly, her father. He was alone, completely alone. His phone vibrated again. Another notification. Another comment. Coward. Shameful. She deserves better. You failed her. He let the phone slip from his fingers, falling onto the cold concrete. A broken man. A broken future. A truth he could no longer hide from. His silence had destroyed everything. The room was dim when she woke. Only the soft glow of a monitor illuminated the walls, casting gentle shadows across the hospital bed. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. The smell of antiseptic, the hum of the machines, the ache in her knees. Then, it all rushed back. The slap, the fall, the panic, the ambulance, her father's arms. Instinctively, she pressed her hand to her stomach. A nurse walked in right then, her voice warm and soothing. You're awake. That's good. And before you ask, yes, the baby is perfectly stable. We've been monitoring the heartbeat. It's strong. Her eyes filled with tears. Relief washed over her like warm light, breaking through a storm. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. The nurse smiled gently. Your father has been right outside all night. He refused to leave. Should I bring him in? She nodded. A moment later, Ignacio walked in. The exhaustion in his eyes did nothing to dim the fierce protection that radiated from him. He sat beside her and took her hand, gripping it as if it were the last anchor in a violent sea. How are you feeling, my daughter? Better, because you're here. His jaw tightened. I promised your mother I would protect you. I failed earlier, but I won't fail again. You didn't fail. She squeezed his hand. You saved me. Ignacio inclined his head slightly, letting the weight of her words settle. Then he inhaled slowly and looked her directly in the eyes. There is something you need to know, he said. Police have formally arrested the woman who attacked you. The evidence is overwhelming. There will be charges. She nodded. She needs to be held accountable, not just for me, for the baby. Ignacio's voice softened. And the groom? He's outside the hospital. Tried to get in. Security contained him. Her breath hitched, but not with longing, with clarity. I don't want to see him, she said. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever again. Ignacio nodded. There was no hesitation in his acceptance. That's what I expected, and I will ensure your wishes are respected. For a long moment, they sat in silence, in understanding. The last few hours had shattered her world, but beneath the pain, she could feel something rebuilding, something stronger. She swallowed hard. I need to make a statement. Not to the press, to myself. Ignacio waited. I am done with him. With his lies, with his fear, with the way he let someone hurt me and our child. Today showed me who he really is, and who I need to be. You are stronger than this moment, Ignacio murmured. Stronger than anything he tried to break. She wiped tears away with the back of her hand. I want the engagement officially dissolved. I want my name removed from anything tied to him. I do not want him involved in my future, or my child's future. Ignacio nodded once. It will be done. A soft knock came at the door. A police officer entered. Ma'am, he said softly, we have gathered all statements and all recordings. The full incident is now part of the investigation. You won't need to testify until you are ready. Thank you, she replied. And one more thing. The officer hesitated. The public response is overwhelming. People across the country are sending support. They are outraged by what happened to you. She felt her chest tighten, not with fear this time, but with something close to strength. Good, she said softly, because I will not be silent. The officer nodded and left. Ignacio put a hand on her forehead. Rest now. You and your child need peace. But she shook her head. One more thing. What is it? He asked. Promise me, she whispered, that he will never have access to my child. Ignacio leaned closer. I promise you with everything I am. He lost that right the moment he chose himself over your safety. She exhaled shakily. Relief washed over her. Outside the hospital, the groom sat alone on the cold pavement, ignored by the world that had already judged him. His phone buzzed endlessly with notifications he couldn't bear to read. Headlines, comments, videos. His name was everywhere, but never with sympathy. Inside, the bride rested her hand on her stomach and felt the faintest flutter. A reminder, a promise, a new beginning. Her world had cracked open, but it had also cleared a path, one filled with a strength she never knew she possessed, a future she would protect fiercely, for herself, for her child, and with her father standing by her side. It was not the wedding she planned, it was the life she chose.